Sarah Holman again, and this is my last video here at IndieCon. This has been so much fun. Of course, my voice is giving out because of my cold, excuse me. This is my elixir tea. I drink hot tea all the time. Even in the summer, I tend not as quite as much in the summer, but I do drink a lot of hot tea. Various kinds. My favorite brands are Tezo and Bigelow, with a little bit of Republic tea thrown in. So yeah, that helps a lot with my writing. But but in all seriousness, today we're talking about planning your timeline, or how to allow for enough time for each step of the writing process. So different people's writing steps will look differently. So I'm just gonna walk through what it looks like for me. Usually I have prep time. I have writing the first draft. I have a shelf time, because I usually, between the writing the first draft, I shelf it for a time, and then I come back to it for edit number 1, then I have edit number 2, edit number 3, and then I have beta reading, final edits, and then publishing. So really, what are we looking at for each of those projects? The best thing, one of the things you're going to do, we talked about this in juggling multiple projects, writing projects, the previous video I did. You have to figure out what works for you, and you need to be on a schedule, or else you won't know how to allow for each step. And some projects will throw you for a loop. So, unfortunately, you can't always plan it. But how to plan for time is, one, you need to look at several factors. One, the length of the project. Different books, a short story is not going to take as much time as an epic. And an epic is going to take more time than just a novel length, a 50,000 novel. We're talking, epic is like 100,000 plus words, and we're in the term I'm using it for right now. So we're looking at so there's a lot of factors, and also and when you're looking at editing, how much editing is it going to need? My first drafts look horrible. I even have, most people would open it and just cringe. I cringe. My word processor at times just said, "There's too many grammar and spelling mistakes for me to display. Tell me when you fix some, and then I'll talk to you." Yeah, it's embarrassing sometimes. However, so you have to know your length of your project, how much editing it's going to need. And that's just average for you. If you end up with pretty clean documents after your first draft, it's not going to take you as long as me. Or if you're slower in your writing process, typically it doesn't take you as long in your editing process. My friend Kelsey Bryant and I are opposites of this. She takes a long time to write her first draft. Editing process is quick. She's just really good like that. I take a very short time in my writing process, but it takes a long time to edit. So you have to look at that. Probably, if I had to pick an average for any writing project, you're looking at about a year, and much less than that, and you probably will be sloppy somewhere. At least for a novel or epic length book, it's possible to get it out well done before that, but I'm just talking about typical. Typical, you want, if you're doing a quality project, it's going to be at about a year's time frame you're looking from the prep to publish. So let's start out with your prep time. The prep time for any book is going to be depending on how much research you need to do. B, if you like to do outlining, and if so, how much. C, any other developmental things that you need. Back here you see I like to put up things that represent the current project I'm writing. Like, this is a map of Charleston that I was really excited I got to visit, because I'm writing a book set there. which was just an awesome blessing from God. I didn't even think I was going to get to do that. But I have maps up here, and I keep little stickies with things that I think of when working on projects. Yeah, and back here, I have a little cup on my thing over here, and I keep it with pins and little sticky pads so I can jot notes down, stick them up on my writing wall as I'm going. But, so prep time is going to look different. I don't do huge outlines. I'm more of a go by the seat of your pants type person. Or it's just, I find writing outlines just doesn't really work very well for me. I've done outlines sometimes, but most of the time, I don't even stick to it even when I do it. Some people find outlines incredibly helpful, so you just have to know. But research is usually how I determine how much prep time I need. The historical ones I've done, I usually do according to how in depth. For the different kind of courage, I started research almost a year before. Not quite. And then because I knew I was going to write it, I started reading stuff on it, and then I really ramped it up 6 months before, and then the month before I read it, I did what I call total immersion, which is, if I'm watching something, it's something set during that time. If I'm reading something, it's either set or written during that time, and I'm just reading a huge amount of historical things about that time. That one was pretty historically intensive. It was a book about the history of the time. For my most recent release, Emmeline, that was more just set in a time period. Really didn't have a lot to do with the historical events going on. Excuse me for just a moment. Much better. But Emmeline was set in the 1930s, and I dealt with the Great Depression. I dealt with some historical events that affected the character, but mainly what I needed to know was slang, clothing, stuff like that. And as I was writing, as I say, I don't like to outline a huge amount, so I ended up needing to do some about cameras of that were around in the year 1930, and so I had to do a little research as I was going. But to prepare for that one, it took me about a month or two of really heavy research, reading some books. Actually, I had great resources to me because my mom really likes Grace Livingston Hill, who wrote right around the time, and I read, I actually looked up a timeline, because Grace Livingston Hill wrote over 100 novels, and read some of hers that were actually written in and around, right around 1930, which really helped me a lot with the slang, and also some of the issues Christians faced at the time. So you get your research from various places, and so it's dependent on how, so you get the idea. It's somewhat dependent on what kind of a project you're doing. So you go for prep, and for each project, you're going to have to figure out what's your prep time. Other things you might need to do is talk to experts. If you're trying to write something to do with the medical field, you will probably want to find somebody who has some medical expertise to ask them. Is it true that somebody who has memory loss, you can hit them on the head and they remember? Because that's the key to your entire plot, or one of the things that happens, and your doctor could look at you and say that was a Hollywood invented idea, and so things like that. So if you'd finding experts. I think about online, a lot of times you can find them that way. Forgive me again. So after you've figured out your prep time, now we're moving on to the writing the first draft. If in writing the first draft, again, you need to figure out how much time you spend on it. I typically spend, when I'm writing a draft, about, I could usually get out between 2 and 5,000 words a day. It's according to how much time I actually spend on the project and how I'm feeling. If I was writing today because I have a cold, 2,000 probably be about the max I could get out because I type slower when I'm tired and congested. On a really good day, if I'm feeling fine, 5,000 is probably a reasonable goal. And the length of the book. You want to make sure you give yourself plenty of time because there will be days that you just won't be able to get it. You'll get stuck. Though if you get stuck for too long, go to the next thing you know happens and then come back and fill in that spot. Just a helpful hint. But so the writing process, again, you want to look at how many words you can type per minute, how much time you're going to be able to spend on it, and seasonal. It matters. What time of year it is matters when you're talking about how much time. If I'm going to write a draft in January, I typically can get it done in a couple of weeks to that month, because I usually don't have a lot of stuff going in January. This January ended up being a huge exception. If I'm trying to write a book in November, I'm doing good to finish it in November. Thank you, NaNoWriMo, for doing it during a month that has all sorts of holiday stuff in it. Huh? Yeah. That's a real challenge. So you really don't want to plan on if you celebrate Christmas and you do a lot of stuff around Christmas time. Usually December is not a good time to plan to finish a novel in a month. November often isn't a very good month to try to finish a novel in a month. But think about the time frame you have, and also like seasonal allergies. I know when pollen's blooming like it is right now is not a good time for me to plan to accomplish huge projects in a short amount of time, because I know there's going to be downtime. So like I said, seasonal stuff plans into it. Next, we go to, for me, editing task 1. This will involve me going through and getting out the major stuff. For me, that means going through and all the squiggly lines in Word and that I go through and get rid of those. I'll often, fix the major mistakes. I'll also go through, and if I see inconsistencies, I'll mark them and figure out what I'm going to do with those. This typically takes me a couple of days. When editing stage 1 for me is just like a quick read through after Time on the Shelf, which I've skipped. After first draft is always a good idea to set aside the project for me, it's at least a month. It doesn't mean I'm not working on other projects. I go on to another one. Once I've written it, I usually go to editing something I've already written. But it needs the time to sit there, because if not, it's just too fresh on your brain. You think you did something you didn't. So anyway, edit 1, I go through, get out the major mistakes, look for inconsistencies and mark those and figure out what I'm going to do with them. Edit 2 is the most extensive and teeth-pulling for me, because you sit down and I stare at one sentence sometimes for a long time and go, would amazing or awesome be a better word there? Is that comma placement right? Should he really be wearing orange, or would blue really fit the mood better? Things like that. It's just a meticulous sweep through for me, and that phase, and if it's a good time for me, 2 weeks is the maximum, the fastest I could get through that edit. And actually, I use excuse me, cold, so my nose is a little itchy. One of the tools I love, and it's free online, is the Edit Minion, my editing minion. The Edit Minion. That's it. It's editminion.com, I believe, or maybe .org. But anyway, you paste your words into it, and it comes out, and it just spits out weak words, stuff like inane preposition, which is I'm notorious for in my first drafts and things like that. It's just a computer doing a check, so sometimes it's like, well, that needs to be there, or that, so it's not perfect, but it really helps me catch some things and see some things. But that's really helpful for me in that edit. So I really highly recommend that tool. And then after that, I do a paper edit. I actually print it off, and which is a little bit, and because it's always a little bit different reading it when you're holding it. And I usually will pace around my room. I'll show you a little bit. This is my domain, and I will pace around here, and my family will think I'm a little crazy because I'll be in here muttering, because I will read it aloud. It's completely different when you read it aloud. And I will sit here with my special red pen. I have a very special red pen that I use for editing. And so I will sit there and I will edit my paper copy. And then I will take those edits and put them into the computer. Because that's how my brain works. It just works really well to do that. That edit I usually do in a day or two. Mainly because I'm a full-time writer. That's what I spend my time on. Sometimes it takes up to 3, but I'm pacing and writing, and it's just quicker for me to do in paper. But like I said, and already all the major things are usually cleared up. And I read it aloud, which is actually what takes the longest, because I could read a lot faster than I could talk. Yeah, so it slows me down some, which is a little hard, but it's actually good. That's why I catch some last minute things. So, and then the last phase of that I send it, usually my dad goes and laughs his way through my comma mistakes, which I'm hoping that I'm going to get better at this year. That's one of my goals, is to work on comma placement. Yes, my dad has laughed at some of my grammar mistakes. Anyway, he will go through and get out the major ones, and then I'll send it right to my beta readers. But even if I didn't have them, I'd send it directly to my beta readers. And I usually put out a call to my street team, and then I know some people that just for particular projects they're interested, and they'll go through, and some of them will come back with, "Oh, you done missed it. This needs a comma." And then other people will have content editing. And I'll sit down then, and that they usually, I try not to give them any less time than a month, because people are busy. There's a lot of projects out there, and when they're looking for mistakes, it takes longer. You can't just sit down and read it, and it's also the computer screen, which usually takes people longer. So you have to allow for the time for that. So that's so I usually allow a month for that. Again, I'm not busy. I work on another project, probably the one that I edited before I've already gotten the stuff back from the beta readers, or I'll write a new book according to where things are in the writing process during that month. And then I'll get those back, and I'll set aside usually 3 or 4 days, and I will sit back down with those beta readers' notes. And here's something very important. I do it, even if a beta reader is late getting it back, I go ahead and do the edit on the day that I said, because like I said in my video about juggling multiple writing projects, it's important to stick to a schedule. And so I've had some people who've sent me notes late, and are they still helpful? Sometimes I'll go through and look. Sometimes I'll be like, I've already published the book, or I'm so close, it's not very helpful, or I'll scan through and find nothing helpful. So there are certain people who, it doesn't matter how late it is, I'll still go through, because they might have some very helpful things for second edition, and things like that. But even if your beta readers are late getting it back, stick to your own schedule and get it back. I usually go through, and most of the time it only takes me about 4 days. There have been some projects that throw me for a loop. Courage and Corruption was one of the ones that threw me for a loop. There were some major issues with that book. It looked fine to me. It looked fine to my family. When it got out into the reader world, there were some people just like, I don't understand why he's acting this way. I'm not connecting with the story. I'm not interested in this. This part seems boring, which was, again, it was very hard. I had to get frustrated for a few minutes, cry for a few more, and then go, okay, I want to make this book the best it can be. And that's what these beta readers want to do. That's why they're giving me this critique. And so let's fix it. Some of you will remember that speech from my video about finding a good editor. So there will be a throw for curveballs, but I typically 3 to 4 days to go through all those notes, because at this point I'm not going to, usually, unless there's major issues like there was with Courage and Corruption, I'm not going to toss out everything that, I'm not going to do any huge changes. There will always be people who don't like it, especially me, who bounces genres, who has very different characters from book to book. There's going to be some books that just don't resonate or irritate some readers. So I know that I'm not going to please everyone every time. But, knowing who to listen to when. And then, there's the publishing process. Now, this is something I'm still getting down, is how much time to allow for it. I could get a Kindle book out pretty quick. Once the final edit, once the final polish. A lot of times, sometimes after the beta reading, I'll have one person go through and just polish and make sure that in my changes I didn't change some value, undo a correct comma placement or something like that. And then I will start talking about getting ready, building up a campaign for the release, and publishing it. It typically will take me, I will have already had a cover of worked on while, by the time it moves to the editing phase, I've already worked on a cover, and I'll have it by the time it goes out, usually to the beta readers. So that's already said and done. I'll format it for various things, various avenues, whether it's Kindle or CreateSpace, which are the two I use, and I'll format it and publish it. That just the actual publishing doesn't take long. It's usually tried to build anticipation and stuff that takes a long time. And that phase for me is usually I'll have it all ready, and about a month after that it will come out. So planning your timeline will depend on how fast you work, how much time you have to devote to a project, and just figuring out when good times for you are, and so allowing enough time for each one to do it well. So that's how to plan your timeline for, and I hope this has been helpful. I've loved being here. You can catch me at thedestiny1.com, and feel free to stop by and drop me a comment, or I have a little box where you can send me a question, and I'd be happy to answer it. Have a blessed